Over communicating is probably when you are in a client meeting. I love to spend some time to learn about people's personal lives. I don't want to go straight into business. I'll always share what I was up to over the weekend, and I want to know about their kids or their boss or their parents. I want people to communicate as much as possible, but of course you have to have an awareness of what is over communicating. Why I like to hire young people who just graduated is because you can see it in their eyes. They're hungry to learn, they're hungry to do cool things. The hardest part of being a PM, I think, is...
Hi everyone, welcome back to Modular Podcast. Now we are talking about project management, and I'm Bestalia and this is my boss, Michael. So Michael, I want to know, can you give me a brief explanation about project management in 3 words?
In 3 words. Okay, here it is. Communication, timeline, quality control. That's project management, at least for marketing and creative projects. We're not here to talk about engineering or software or anything like that.
What do you mean by communication?
Project management is all about communication. Projects fail when people don't communicate, when PMs don't talk to the creative teams, when they don't talk to clients. That's when projects fail. That's when the expectation of what's going to happen doesn't meet the reality. When people communicate, just like in a relationship, all problems can be solved. So for example, communication is the initial discovery session. It's creating the client and project brief in a very thorough way. It's talking to your team face to face and telling them what you need them to do. It's getting off the text messages and the emails, getting on the phone, having face-to-face meetings. The more you communicate, especially with your voice rather than with text, the better outcome for your project. And project managers have a responsibility to be good communicators.
Is there any difference between communicating when you are having a relationship and doing project manager? Of course, there's difference, right?
Yes, there's a difference. In a relationship, if you are having problems, you have to talk about it. You can't just do the silent treatment. And the funny thing is, in our line of work, clients, when they're upset, they could also, which I've seen before, fall into the silent treatment. I don't think people do this on purpose. I think it's a defense mechanism that people use. But the reality is, just like in a marriage, in a relationship, as you communicate more, you solve problems faster, and the outcome is a smoother working relationship or romantic relationship.
So the more you communicate is the better.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not only about communicating more, but it's about how you communicate, which is I don't accept our PM team to use text messaging as the primary way of communication. I ask them to get on the Google Meets with the camera on as much as possible to talk about project updates, any issues, any roadblocks. I've found over the years that when people can hear each other's voices, everything is much more smooth, transparent. When you can hear the other person laughing, when you can listen to a person's tone of voice, you can learn a lot about the context of the communication.
Is there something called over communicating in PM?
Over communicating is probably when you are in a client meeting and you're sharing information about like where you went over the weekend and what you had for lunch, and if your boyfriend's mad at you. I want people to communicate as much as possible, but of course you have to have an awareness of what is over communicating. That being said, whenever we're in client meetings, I love to spend some time to learn about people's personal lives. I don't want to go straight into business. I'll always share what I was up to over the weekend, and I want to know about their kids or their boss or their parents. I think at the end of the day, we're just humans talking to humans. That comes first, and whatever work, business, project should come second.
But it's gonna be funny when you try to build a relationship and talk to them, and turns out they don't like you asking that kind of question. Is there any experience like that?
My experience is that people love to talk about themselves, even their personal lives. I think most people don't get enough chances to talk about themselves because most people are not curious. most people are talkers, they're not listeners. So I think that I never worry about sitting in a meeting and maybe going too far with the personal questions. I did have an experience where I did ask some managers of a big company, sort of like what were their personal career goals. And maybe I tried to connect our project being successful with perhaps how that would fall in line with their career goals. And I looked at them and they looked back at me like, we're not really willing to answer this question. And it was a kind of an awkward silence. And so I noticed that maybe in some big Asian companies, you can't go really too personal about stuff like that.
Oh, so in the Western, it's much more open?
I think in the Western companies, you can basically go in any direction with your conversation, almost. You have to obviously have awareness of what's the line you shouldn't cross. I do think in Asia, you have to be a bit more careful about certain things that people don't want to talk about in public, which I'm still learning. And I've been out here living in Asia for years, and I'm still learning every day. It's a very old and mysterious culture for me, so I have to keep learning.
Oh, but I think you did it really good. That's why I'm working here.
What, communication?
Yeah, that's why I'm happy here.
I thought you were working here because you need money.
No, okay. Another question for you is, I want to know, how often do you do meeting? Is there any the ideal number of meeting in 1 week? When it's gonna be too much, when it's gonna be too less?
Every client has a different way of working. Generally speaking, a weekly meeting with a client is good. Hopefully 20 minutes to 40 minutes. And during that weekly meeting, we'll go over the project status. We'll present new proposals, new concepts that we want to work on. We'll explain the plans for the next month. So the weekly meetings are very good. Usually they happen on a Friday or a Thursday. When you're starting to have meetings more than every week, I feel that gets into micromanaging. I haven't met too many clients that are interested in micromanaging us or their agency, thankfully. I've also had clients that never have meetings, could be a whole year goes by and we could never get them to join a meeting. And I don't think this is good either. I think when clients want to be completely hands-off, what ends up happening is it can veer more and more, the project can veer more and more off of what the initial goal and expectation was. And so because our projects run for years at a time through the retainer model, I think as long as we're working on a retainer model, weekly meeting, bi-weekly meeting is pretty good. And hopefully, if these meetings happen online, we could see our clients face-to-face at least once a month.
Do you have experience on being a project manager before? It sounds like that.
Well, I think anybody who's working on a big project inevitably is a project manager. So for example, if you're a student and you are writing your resume, you are a project manager. That's a project. The truth is, if you're baking a cake, that's a project. So everything can be a project. Now, project manager in the professional sense, my background was in PR. My title was Public Relations Project Manager as my first professional job. And so, yeah, that was how I learned a lot about working with teams, especially software, combining software with PR writing, because I had to build a platform in my job. My second job as a PR communications guy was also in project management. So combining these two, I went all in on project management when I joined the app company that built apps. And then that was very intense, where we did Scrum project management, which is the daily stand-up meetings and 2-week sprints. So I brought what I learned from software project management into our creative agency. And, now I think we're getting pretty good at it.
What communication app you use for project manager?
Well, here we use Notion and we use Slack. And with these two apps, we can get a lot done. Slack is how we talk to each other. So the beauty of Slack is it means we don't need to email each other. I think email is slowly dying. It's used as more a way to send contracts. So whenever we send an email, it's almost like we're collecting a bunch of information that a client needs to refer to for, let's say, years later. We send it off, so that's almost like a contract. Whereas daily communication, we do it on Slack. Notion works for timelines, storing files, delegating. And so, yeah, with these two things, and hopefully Notion will build their own chat function and we don't even need to use Slack anymore. Sorry, guys from Slack.
So can you tell me the hardest part of project management?
I think the hardest part that I've seen people struggle with is some PMs, they just lose the organization. They lose the attention to detail. And it starts out small. They might have forgotten one detail. They forgot to send one email. They forgot to have one chat with a creative person. No big deal. But then because that communication didn't happen earlier on a Monday, something gets derailed on a Tuesday. And now they're making up for that. And then the third thing gets derailed. And so I've seen how projects can completely unravel just because of some small details that the PM forgot to talk about early on in the project. The hardest part of being a PM, I think, is having your own personal PM system to keep track of all of the details, because the PM has to be extremely detail-oriented. Details about the project scope, details about timelines, details about quality control protocols. Once a PM starts to lose track of these details, it actually has a kind of like a exponential effect where the whole project can go off track. But I don't think it's a hard job. I think that if you just have the right mindset, anyone can be a good PM. It's just, you really have to care.
Is there a moment when a PM getting too frustrated and then all of the project become like disaster?
Well, our PMs are quite experienced, so we don't have that problem. I, however, had a project where everything went to hell. I was building an app for a cruise company. I was too inexperienced. I didn't have the support from my manager that I needed. I had to deal with engineering team who are very analytical minded. On one side, I had to deal with a design team who were quite more like artistic thinking and quite emotional, actually. On the other side, then I had my manager asking me what's the progress. Then I had my client asking me what's the progress. I was pulled apart in 4 directions, and in the end I just had to give up. And it was actually the best experience to give up because I knew I was way in out of my head at that point.
Can anyone be a PM out of school?
Yeah, like, if you just graduate and you're interested in project management, I think it does help to have some work experience, some life experience, especially because if you are older, you're naturally a better communicator and you have more self-awareness. I do highly encourage anyone, even like you, just graduated, to get into project management, because once you learn this skill, you'll use it for the rest of your life. Like I said, everything is a project, everything important. The thing that a young person needs to understand is that a project manager job can be very intense, and there's a lot of responsibility. And for some young guys and girls, they don't want that much responsibility at a young age.
How do you handle when you found an obstacle in project management?
Normally, problems happen in project management when 2 people who need to talk to each other for some reason are not talking to each other. And it's funny because I've watched this happen a lot, and it seems like the other person thinks, the one person, the PM, thinks it's, for example, the videographer's job to proactively communicate something. And then the videographer thinks it's the PM's job to ask for something. And both of them are looking at each other, almost standing across the street, like, well, who's gonna share information first? What I do when I see obstacles in projects is because I saw that our PM is not communicating well with our creative team. And then all I do is I get these 2 together and I say, hey guys, it seems like there's some information missing here. Can you guys all talk about it? Can we chat? Figure this out? And suddenly both sides realize, oh, okay, yeah, all we needed to do is have this chat and we solved this problem.
So it is important to make lines between each other's job tasks.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to understand that there's no SOP for who should talk to who. I think a PM has to communicate aggressively to everybody who's on their team to make the project work well. And so, for example, if the PM thinks, well, it's not my job to be the first one to say something, well, that's already the wrong way to look at PM.
And how do you create a culture of continuous improvement in project?
Culture of continuous improvement comes from a culture of self-awareness. And that is something I'm really working on right now. I'm trying to be myself become more self-aware of my management style. And I'm trying to teach my team, teach you guys how to bring self-awareness into your job and into your life. So for me, self-awareness is just asking people like, hey, what are like 3 things I should improve on in my management style? And if I ask 3 people this question, I'll learn 9 ways I can improve. And yeah, it might bruise my ego a bit. I mean, I think I'm amazing. And my mom says I'm amazing. So I must be amazing. But if I don't ask people what I'm doing wrong, how could I ever improve as a leader? I think PMs need to ask the same question. Everybody on my team, which we're going to do self-awareness training next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everybody to ask coworkers how I'm doing, how you are doing, learn from other people who work with you, how you can improve. And it's a little bit tricky because we don't want everyone shouting and blaming each other during this process. We actually want people to communicate this in a very delicate way, which I will actually teach in another video.
And do you think online meeting can replace offline meeting?
This is a very interesting question that people keep talking about because at our agency, we are not particularly a remote working agency, except for Fridays. My feeling is that a meeting that happens face-to-face is 100 times more effective than a meeting that happens online. And I just know that when people are in the same room together and they feel each other's warmth, there's more of a willingness to cooperate and help each other. There's more of a feeling like we're all together in this one place, in this one time, and this moment is happening between us and it will never happen again. And that sense of everyone together, of togetherness, pushes people to work together more effectively, I think. Meanwhile, if we're remote, if one person's in Japan and another person's in Bali and I'm in New York, we see each other, we hear each other, but then that one key thing is still missing, which is that feeling of oneness, that feeling of togetherness is still missing.
Yeah. I also remember at a time when we have COVID all around the world, I fell asleep when I was having online meeting.
Oh, it sounds like you just were up all night.
No, it's fine. It's a school project.
So you won't fall asleep in a...
Of course, no, because you're staring at me.
All right, I'm gonna check, make sure you're not falling asleep during this interview.
Is there any difference between the online and offline meeting when we are talking about the effectiveness?
The effectiveness. I think that somebody who runs a meeting well can be effective online or offline. I just think that there are additional challenges when you are online to running a meeting well. For example, if people turn off their cameras, you can no longer watch their facial expressions to know what people are feeling or how do they interpret this latest comment or statement. And so you have to kind of guess, and then the whole communication is less effective. When you are together, there's just a whole new dimension of communication that happens, that, body language and tone of voice and smiles. At the same time, we want to collaborate with people all over the world. We don't only want to work with people who are in our city. So I will never discount online meetings. We still collaborate with artists all over the world. So we still have to do it. Rule is always turn on your camera. Don't use any filters. Don't use any backgrounds. Show the other person your authentic self. Even show them your messy bedroom. I think that's better than just trying to be somebody you're not while you're on camera.
As a PM manager, do you also have to think about the budget and financial?
Well, yeah, a PM always has to consider the budget. When projects go over budget, I mean, that's a big problem, because then how do I pay your salaries if projects are going over budget?
Do you have to decide the project, or someone else will do that for you?
Decide the project?
Decide the budgeting for the project.
We have general rules about that. So, for example, we want our profit margins to be hopefully no less than 25%, and hopefully more like 50%. So with that general rule, PM should budget accordingly.
Oh, I thought that's a secret of this company.
Yeah, don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. Can you tell me different types of methods in project management?
Well, traditional project management has, as I recall, two main ways. There's a waterfall method.
Ooh.
And then the waterfall is where the project is planned and one big meeting, and then there's a schedule, and then everybody knows what to do. Then there's the Scrum method, where you break down a project into tiny pieces and you have a daily stand-up meeting for 15 minutes, which is also how most software is built now. The way we do it is probably a hybrid model where we do waterfall, we plan the entire schedule, but we also have our weekly meetings every Monday to learn what's going on, what are the roadblocks, what everyone is working on, what they need support with.
Oh, but meetings can be boring for members, your team members, right?
Our meetings are really exciting.
What's the secret to that?
Exciting meetings?
Yeah.
Well, we have music in the background. We have snacks during the meetings. Handsome boss. What else do you need?
Yeah, that's true, guys.
No, a good meeting, a boring meeting is a failed meeting. If somebody feels bored in the meeting, then they don't belong in the company. Then they're in the wrong place, right? They should be in the meeting where they think it's not boring.
How do you make sure you have an effective communication? How do you know you are doing well?
As a PM? Well, with the project, quality is high. If the project is successful, that means the communication was successful. That never happens if there's no effective communication. The other way I know that we're communicating effectively is if people's stress levels are low. A lot of stress comes from people wanting to say something, but they don't say it. They keep it in. And I think that happens when people are just uncomfortable to have an awkward conversation.
Why you stare at me like that? Awkward conversation. So what do you do?
Because this is an awkward conversation.
How do you do and how do you avoid awkward? How do you avoid people being afraid of having an awkward and straightforward conversation?
I try to build a culture of direct communication about everything here. And I have no problem bringing somebody aside and telling them, hey, you're falling asleep in the meeting. What's going on, Dad?
I'm not.
You fell asleep in the meeting yesterday. That's not okay. I think
I didn't. Okay.
as a leader, you have to have uncomfortable conversations with people as soon as possible. Don't let things fester. If somebody is making the same mistake again and again, you have to have a talk with them and find out what's going on.
What's the longest project you have ever held?
Well, our projects can go on for years.
For a year. It can be boring. It feels like, oh, I don't want to do this again.
Maybe you should just go to Disney World and then you can have a great time and you can live there and you'll never be bored.
No, have you ever had this feeling? Is this normal feeling to PM to experience? Oh, why I have to do this?
I think that's just being an adult, right? And soon you'll understand.
Oh, okay.
When you're an adult, you have to do things that are fun, things that are boring. At the end, just try to, don't take yourself too seriously.
Can Can you give me a book recommendation that I have to read before I become a PM or anyone want to be a PM?
I think the best book about project management would be the Eric Ries, The Lean Startup. The Lean Startup is about building a MVP, most viable product, to test your business. And it's all about how do you build something that is just good enough to test before you spend all the time and resources to build out something which is perfect. The Lean Startup. Read it.
Oh, okay.
Read it tonight. All of it.
Okay. The Lean Startup by
Eric Ries.
Eric Ries. Take note.
Very famous book. It's still relevant today.
Oh. So when you are having your team as a project manager, people come with different background. They come with different experience and knowledge. Even you have intern here that is just, they haven't graduated yet. And you also have someone that already been in this industry for like 10 years, 15 years. How do you manage the balance between them?
Well, why I like to hire young people who just graduated is because they bring this sort of ambition and fire. You can see it in their eyes. They're hungry to learn. They're hungry to do cool things. Some of the interns, for example, they are influencers. You already have how many fans? Like a lot, like 10 million fans. And at the same time, if I say, hey, Des, can you take out the trash? You will help to take out the trash, right? So I think the young people, they bring this sense of ambition, of excitement, of curiosity. What they're lacking, of course, is experience. They're lacking self-awareness. They're lacking the very smooth communication. So what I like to do is that we spend a year together, and at the end of a year, you learn all those skills. And so by year 2, you're already a very effective PM at maybe 23 years old. Now, some of the older experienced people, they bring their own benefits because they come from big companies. They've learned a lot of processes. They have confidence. They communicate well. They have good English, good second, third languages. Then they come here and they bring all of that experience. What's lacking from the older people is sometimes they're lacking the sense of ambition. Previously, they have been told this is not possible. Everything they want to do is impossible. So now they've sort of been beaten down in how big they should dream. So when I combine the experienced older project managers and the young ones, what I'm hoping to get is this perfect soup of ambition, hunger, dreams, and experience, confidence, and just that wisdom.
So it's the best combination to have the young and the experienced one.
Yeah, and I've also seen how the young PMs will latch onto an older PM, and two of them could be, close friends learning from each other. I've seen that happen a lot. And I've noticed sometimes people hang out together on weekends, they enjoy each other's company. I like to have international people. I like to have local people. I put them all together. Everyone speaking a second language to communicate. So that's great.
But in your experience, is there any difference between the team that is made out of all experienced people? And what is the difference between those kind and the one that have like different variative team members? Do they work faster?
If I hire a team of, let's say, very experienced project managers, they'll do everything very efficiently and they'll communicate great. And from the outside, everything will seem like a perfect, well-oiled machine. But if you look a little bit closer, you'll realize that what's missing is that little spark, that little sense of creativity and weirdness that I think creative projects always need. And so what I'm hoping is that when you put in that young person who, for example, a lot of the young people like you grew up on social media. When you were like 12, 13 years old, you already had Facebook, right? When did you have your first Facebook account?
Oh, much younger, maybe like 10 years old.
Okay, you had a Facebook account at 10 years old and you grew up on social media. Now imagine the person who had the first Facebook account at 25 years old So there's a whole different perspective and mindset. It's like you can't explain water to a fish. A fish just knows how to swim smoothly. And I think the young kids right now, they just know how to very smoothly navigate on social media when posting content, creating content. They just know it. It's just they started so young. So it's better to combine experienced teams with young guys and girls who grew up on social media. That's the sweet spot.
Oh, so now I know why I'm here.
That's why you're here. So don't let me down.
What do you want to say to young PM out there?
Well, I think if you're a young person and you want to be a PM, don't be intimidated by the challenge. Jump right into it. Learn how to be a PM at a young age. You'll use this skill for the rest of your life. There is a sacrifice. You might come home every day thinking about your job. Your friends might be doing something silly, like maybe teaching a part-time language. Your friends might have more simple jobs, like working in a cafe or something. Meanwhile, you're running an entire project. So I would say take the challenge and then apply your PM skill to the thing that you're really passionate about. So you could learn PM frameworks and apply it to art. Let's say you want to build an art gallery, or apply it to software. You want to build an app, or apply it to video production. But that's how the world was built, just through PMs. That's how the pyramids were built. That's how the Eiffel Tower was built, through project management.
Okay. Thank you for all of the information I got.
All right, let's do it again soon.
Thank you. Bye all.